So we've mostly focused on Europe's exploration, but remember they're exploring other parts of the world, and you're going to see some reactions from those groups of people. So I want to look at China's not only their own efforts at exploration and colonization, but also their response to interference from Europe. So last time we left off, the Mongols were in China. The Yuan dynasty collapsed after Kublai Khan. And eventually you have the rise of a new dynasty, the Ming Dynasty, in 1368. And the Ming emperors will start to solidify their power, but some of it was lost after their fall to the Mongols. So one of the Ming emperors, the Yongle emperor, decided to send one of his favorite explorers, or not explorers, but admirals, on a mission of diplomacy and treasury, just to basically try and show everybody that, hey, China's back, the Ming Dynasty is powerful, you should respect us. And the guy he sent was his favorite admiral, Zheng He. Zheng was a Muslim from the western part of China, because Islam had well sort of expanded into Asia at this point. He was a member of the Chinese court, and he was considered by the emperor and by other contemporaries to be really one of the best admirals he had. So he sent Zheng He with a huge fleet of ships on 7 different voyages throughout the Indian Ocean, Indonesia, and all the way as far west as East Africa, as Mombasa, and up into the Red Sea. And his purpose there wasn't, like European explorers, to discover things or to bring back spices or secure trade routes. Mostly these were missions to exact tribute, to tell people, hey, this emperor's great, you need to give him some stuff, but also to give things away. The idea was that if the Ming Dynasty showed how much wealth they had by giving a lot of it away, they'd show how much power they had. And so Zheng He on his voyages not only give a lot of things out, but also bring a lot of things and people back to China. His purpose was different, and also his ships were quite different. They had these very large ships called treasure ships, which you can see in the comparison in this diagram to a caravel, are much, much larger. They're not made to go far out over the ocean, but instead kind of hug the coast. And they carried with them all these silks and spices and other goods. And so Zheng He sails all around the Indian Ocean basin, showing off how powerful China was with his huge fleet of ships. He famously brought back a pet giraffe from one of the kings in Africa to the emperor, and this giraffe lived in the emperor's zoo for a number of years. By the time Zheng He gets back after his last voyage, things had started to change in the Ming Dynasty. The Yongle emperor had died, and you had a new emperor, and this emperor was really influenced by the advice of the scholar officials. Remember that Confucianism has always played an important role in China since its foundations, and these rulers really, or these advisors, really convinced the emperor that it was kind of a waste to send all these expensive ships out and have these missions. For one, trade is looked down on in Confucianism because it's seen as not contributing enough to society. And for another, you still had the threats of Mongols and other nomadic people. So the scholars wanted the emperor to really focus on defending China, expanding the Great Wall, which has expanded the most during the Ming Dynasty, and focus on home defense rather than this extravagant exploration. So Zheng He's ships were scuttled, and you really don't see China try to expand very much beyond mainland China after this. When the Ming Dynasty fell in the 17th century, it was replaced by the Qing Dynasty. The Qing rulers were Manchus from this region called Manchuria. And when they come in, they want to do a lot of the same things that earlier emperors had in showing their ability to rule and their power. So to do that, they really again focused on Confucianism. One of the emperors, the Kangxi Emperor, wanted to particularly show Europeans who had started to trade pretty extensively with China that he was really in charge of the country. He wasn't going to let them kind of run roughshod over his country. So they made a new policy, the Canton Trade Policy, which was really another form of isolationism. They said no Europeans could trade in China outside of a single port in Canton, or as it's called now, Guangzhou. And this is a policy that goes on for hundreds of years. So the Qing Dynasty, which we'll notice China's last dynasty in imperial history, really cut itself off from the rest of the world. And this can really be exemplified in this quote. In the 18th century, you have the Qianlong Emperor. And the British king, George III, sent Qianlong this long letter saying, hey, open up trade with us because it's going to benefit you. And the emperor wrote back basically saying that there's nothing that the China really needs. They have enough access to goods, they have enough food, they're not interested in the inventions of Europe. And this is really the case that China cuts itself off in response to European expansion and in response to the cultural situation in China as well. But the key takeaway here is that both under the Ming and Qing dynasties, China will become more and more isolated, unlike the rest of the world, which was getting more and more connected.